the voice for humanity.
Hello, welcome to the Foreign Policy Review brought to you by Parrot TV. I am Dustin Pickering, and today we have Carlo Parcelli as co-host, usual co-host here. And today we're going to discuss, are Americans going to be sold into another war? We're going to discuss policy with Russia and with China. And so, Carlo, would you like to get started on the discussion? And we'll just, whatever you would like to start off with, just give it a shot. Let's see what happens.
All right. Yeah, that's the theme I've laid out for today. Are Americans stupid enough to be lied into another war, which is the way I would put it. I'd like to cover three areas. I'd like to cover the drumbeats of war in the media about Russia, and Ukraine, the drumbeats in the media about China and Taiwan, and I'd like to also cover the opinions of Africans about who they prefer as a presence on their continent. The Americans in Western Europe or the Chinese. And I'd like to emphasize as much as possible, not so much the lies themselves that the mainstream media is telling about Russia and China, but the comments section of articles that appear. I'm very fond of reading the comment sections. I find them very enlightening, and today I'm going to lean on two articles that appeared in the Washington Post, which is my hometown newspaper, and I just start with the Russian situation.
This is a good way to measure sometimes public opinion, is to read these comments that are on some of these papers in there, just to kind of get an idea of what people are thinking and how they react to the press and its presentation of things. So it'd be interesting to hear what's being said in the Washington Post comment section.
Yeah, to remain open about it, I've been banned from the Washington Post comment section. I've been banned from every comment section I've ever tried to appear on, because I tend to swamp the comment section with facts, and I draw them from all sorts of sources that I'm aware of, and it generates a lot of ridicule among the people in the comments section, so that and that leads me to say to a distinction you would find in the Russian comment section in the Washington Post. There's two kinds of people. There are people who especially dealing with Ukraine, who have some knowledge of the situation, and then you have people who have no knowledge of the situation, so they're just calling these other people like Putin's puppets, or they'll try to make some distinction between Biden's foreign policy and Trump's foreign policy, which there is no distinction, or they'll try to say that Trump was easy on the Russians, when, as a matter of fact, how stupid can you be? The guy had Bolton and Pompeo in his cabinet, and they ratcheted up sanctions, and nobody's changed those sanctions, except that Biden has probably tightened them a little bit more. So you get that dichotomy. If you try to introduce something that actually has some historical basis or some sympathy for the Russians, who are now on their eastern border, completely surrounded by NATO powers, and there's always there's always the threat, even though it's remote, because, well, I shouldn't say that. I think Ukraine might. I know they want to go to NATO, but there's several NATO provisos that they don't qualify for. One being that you can't be under a current conflict. There's an open conflict in the Donbass.
Mm-hmm.
There's no doubt about it. But anyway, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I'd like to read a little bit from the article. This is just warmongering at its. It's just warmongering 101.
This is a good example of studying media literacy, because the way they present a heading, and then and you'll talk a little bit about this, I'm sure, about how they eventually, as you read the article, and if you think about it as you're reading, it actually says the opposite of what the heading can sometimes reveal what it seems to be presenting. So you actually get a different picture. If you're really thinking about what's being said in the article, you totally get a different picture of what they actually say versus what they've tried to tell you they're going to say.
Yeah. In fact, this article it's got a doozy in it, and I'll allude to it.
Right.
The article is entitled, it's under the national security section, Russia planning massive military offensive against Ukraine involving 175,000 troops, U.S. intelligence warns. So if you read that, it's by Shane Harris and Paul Sloan and Paul Sonne, Sonne. If you read that article, it sounds like the invasion is imminent. Now they had a date for it. It was December 7th, and today is December 9th, and the Russians didn't invade. So right. The mainstream media has dropped that. But this article opens with this paragraph. As tensions mount between Washington and Moscow over a potential Russian invasion of Ukraine, U.S. intelligence has found the Kremlin is planning a multi-front offensive as soon as early next year, involving up to 175,000 troops, according to U.S. officials in an intelligence document obtained by the Washington Post. Now, you will notice that the offensive has been moved back till after the first of the year. That's a common tactic. It goes on. The Kremlin has been moving troops toward the border with Ukraine while demanding Washington guarantee that Ukraine will not join NATO. And I've already talked about the impossibility of doing that, at least given the legal framework of NATO. Now, that can be violated at any time. Of course, the United States has violated the legal framework of NATO countless times. And that alliance will refrain from certain military activities in and around Ukrainian territory. The crisis has provoked fears of a renewed war on European soil and comes ahead of a planned virtual meeting next week between President Biden and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Now, there's several things that are missing in this article. Before I go to the flat-out contradiction, there's several things missing from this article. They don't mention, or they don't mention at all, the 2014 U.S.-led coup against the elected government in power at that time. That's not mentioned at all. They also don't mention at all that the power that right-wing nationalists now have in Ukraine as a result of the coup. The article doesn't mention anywhere that Ukraine is now dead last economically since the coup in 2014. I don't know if you know much about Moldova, but they're behind Moldova economically by all the EU economic measures. So neoliberal policies in Ukraine have been disastrous. As a matter of fact, 25 years ago, when this was all coming about, when the Soviet Union was breaking up and Ukraine was talking about, now that they could be independent and all that stuff, and they could get the Nazi uniforms out of the closets and dance around, oh boy, and we could kill Jews again. When they were doing all of that, I wrote an article. I said, you let those Disney World neoliberal corporations in, and they'll starve your fucking asses. And that's exactly what's happening right now. So the other thing other things that are not mentioned, Sevastopol, not in any of these articles, and I have to say, not in any of the comments, has the major warm water port that in the whole Russian realm that it's in Crimea. It's not mentioned. It's extraordinarily important. It was why it brings us to the notion that belies the bullshit in this article about Russia invading and stealing Crimea. Well, the people of Crimea had a referendum, and 90% of the people who voted in the referendum voted to go back to Russia. And the history of Russia is that, I don't want to go too far back, but in 1950s, Nikita Khrushchev, on a whim, signed over Crimea to the Ukraine. But at that time, it was part of the Soviet sphere, the Soviet bloc, so nobody gave it too much thought. But Sevastopol, a warm water port, and you look at a map of the Soviet Union. It's in the south and the east. It's largely landlocked. Is extremely important. It's on the Black Sea. It's probably, I think it's easily the largest warm water port that the Soviets have access. The Russians have access to. So there's all of these things missing or mangled in this warmongering article. So you heard me read the first paragraph as tensions. Now, who's causing the tensions in the Ukraine? In the 2014 coup by the Obama administration, and Biden was vice president then, I would say that's probably one of the major reasons that there's a little tension going on here. You know what I mean? Not only that, but the enormous amount of arms that the United States floods into the region, has flooded into the region. Geography alone dictates the notion that, look, Russia's protecting its own borders there. They're not even leaving their borders to mount this so-called offensive, which I'll address in a minute. But the United States, once again, it's meddling thousands and thousands of miles away from its own borders. This is that simple notion of geography often gets lost on the American people. So after they say the Russians are planning a multi-front offensive as soon as early next year, involving up to 175,000 troops. Paragraph 11, they say, we don't know. We don't know whether President Putin has made the decision to invade. And who's that saying that? None other than Antony Blinken. Biden's right-hand man. He doesn't know. Well, if he doesn't fucking know, how does the Washington Post know? Well, they don't. They just don't give a fuck if thousands of people lose their lives, millions of people lose their lives. And that's been made evident. That's been made so self-evident by the second invasion of Iraq, if not the first invasion of Iraq. We don't even have to go back to the Gulf of Tonkin or Iran-Contra, any of these other debacles that the United States has been involved in, Afghanistan, you name it. That pretty much says it all. And if you want to, we could go back to 2003. Let's do that. Here we go. And this involves, I'm sorry, go ahead.
The Parrot American Foreign Policy Review here, where we're talking with Carlo Parcelli, co-host of the program. Go ahead, Carlo.
Yeah. So the Post is sort of gone. They went too far. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. But the
Right.
comment section today in the Post,
Mhm.
under an article about satellite imaging, garnered a lot of very negative responses. And this may be why. Here's a Washington Post article from 2003. It's by Karen DeYoung and Walter Pincus. Oh boy, Pincus he's stone cold CIA. There's no Karen DeYoung. I used to call her Karen Eats Her Young, but because she was such a warmonger and when it came to Central America, which is an area I was focusing in, she was so hostile to human life. It wasn't even funny. The article from 2003 is called Satellite Images, Communications Intercepts, and Defectors Briefings. And it begins, the case laid out by Secretary of State Colin L. Powell yesterday, including virtually every element of the lengthy U.S. indictment against Iraq, combining an unprecedented release of U.S. intelligence with familiar allegations pointing to what he called Saddam Hussein's web of lies. This is from the guy who's going to weave the web of lies. This is from a guy who was part of the Project for the New American Century that literally said in its summary report that when an occurrence like 911, it didn't specify 911, but that's what it was on its mind. When an occurrence like 911 happened, they were going to move, and there were 7 countries they were going to take out. And among those countries was Iraq. It didn't matter if Iraq had anything to do with 911. Now, they lied about that. It goes on. Powell, beginning with charges that Hussein has continued to manufacture and conceal weapons of mass destruction. WMD, lie number 1, big lie. No yellow cake, no bombs, and vehicles to deliver them. Powell moved systematically through new evidence of the Iraqi president's active deception of United Nations inspectors. Lie. The inspectors got it right. They were thorough. The United States made it a point of pillaring them and making sure they were not heard, even threatening their families, actually, at one point. His purported links to global terrorist organizations. Lie. He had no link to Al-Qaeda. How the fuck could he have a link to Al-Qaeda? He was a secularist. They were Islamic fundamentalists that was proven to be utterly false. President's dissent and his purported links to global terrorist organizations and in association with Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda. There's the lie. He had no association with Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda, for the reasons I just stated. And his repression of the Iraqi people, well, that he did. But to tell you the truth, you look at the United States and Saudi Arabia and you go, or Israel as far as the Palestinians are concerned, and you go, obviously the United States doesn't give a rat's rectum about people being oppressed. That's just some rhetorical bullshit they throw in. And here we go. Let's just a little bit more of this because it's very enlightening. From 2003, among the new revelations delivered at the United Nations, Powell played what he said were intercepted communications between Iraqi officials who spoke of concealing forbidden ammo, and that's in quotes, and made references to nerve agents. That's another bullshit thing. The notions that I remember that it was implied that the Iraqis had these labs on the back of trucks. At the time, I wrote another article about that. It was a parody. A friend of mine and I wrote it together. We got quite a big response. It was we said those aren't nerve gas agents being produced in the back of those trucks. Those are porta-johns for the troops. That's where they're taking their shits, And it was like, because that's how ridiculous the whole fucking thing was. There's an interesting sidelight to this, and maybe some viewer out there can help me with this. I remember when April Oliver, she was a reporter who who reported that the U.S. had used sarin gas in Vietnam, and she was pilloried by the mainstream press. Just lost her everything, her reputation, her job, everything.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in her defense, I started to noodle around, and after probably just 10 or 15 minutes, I found a manifest, and for a Navy cargo ship or a merchant ship under the U.S. Navy, and on the manifest, it clearly said sarin gas. And guess where that ship was going? It was going to Vietnam. Clearly, right on the manifest, sarin gas going to Vietnam. Now, it doesn't prove that they used it, but usually, in my experience, I've seen if the U.S. builds it, like the atomic bomb, they fucking use it. So, and then I went back to, I sent it to the Washington Post, New York Times, naive as I was. I think I might have sent it to the Nation. Nothing ever happened with it. I never saw it anywhere. So I went back a few years later, and I've gone back from time to time, and I have not been able to find that manifest. But I'm getting a little far afield by that. But you can see what's happened here. Now, the Washington Post, unable to control themselves, went back to satellite imaging, which is what the thing that what's his face, Powell, heavily leaned on. And it's not fool. This was interesting. I woke up this morning and I read this article. I said it's going to be just like the comments on the earlier article that I was just reading from, that lied about when the invasion was going to take place and so on and so forth. That kind of warmongering. But sure enough, that wasn't the case. People's comments, whereas the majority of the unintelligent, oh, you must be a Putin scribe or a Putin whore, comments that appeared on the earlier piece about Russian planning an invasion, when it came to the satellite imaging, the comments altered radically. Let's see if I can pull some of them up quickly. I actually haven't reviewed the new ones, but we'll see what people have to say. We'll do it on the fly. Why not? I'm scrolling down now. It's and the other thing is these satellite images, they claim they're all from Jane's. So, but those things, satellite images are often altered. They certainly were altered for the Iraq War in 2003. Okay. Comments. Here we go. Okay, the first comment. I won't read the comment, the name of the people commenting. That'd be a violation of their privacy. He goes, yeah, and that family in Afghanistan is a dastardly terrorist leadership team. And let's not forget the mobile bio labs in Iraq. See? You don't want to do that. You don't want to remind people about Iraq. More intel from the guys who couldn't muster a single person to defend the capital. I'd laugh, but we're paying more than the next 7 militaries added together and haven't won a war since 1945. See, he's forgetting Grenada. Grenada was technically a win. Because the 38 Cuban engineers that defended it for a week, they had to run away. Okay. The next 7 militaries added together and haven't won a war since 1945. And there's a pandemic of service people killing themselves, which is another show altogether, 10 shows. No, seriously, Charlie Brown, I'll hold the football. That was that guy's comment. Then this guy snidely says, Pentagon places the Ukraine border far inside China. Similar logic says Taiwan airspace extends deep inside Russia. Just keep stepping on the same rake. That's what he's telling the military-industrial complex and the fucks that they control in the White House and in the Congress. Yeah, just keep making the same mistake over again, and sooner or later you'll concuss yourself so hard you won't even have a country, you morons. And here we go. So Russia will begin the attack on Ukraine when they know our satellites are not in position to spot the movement and warn Ukraine. Good point. Good point. The satellites are there taking these images. We're certainly going to know when they're on the move. So let's try another one. If you read between the lines, this article does nothing to confirm the massing of 175,000 Russian troops on the Ukraine border. The WAPO is just doing its usual job, serving the interests of the neocons and military-industrial complex. Not putting anything over on this guy. Remember Mushroom Cloud and Imminent Threat? Yeah, Mushroom Cloud. I forgot about that one. Where are the credible war correspondents and investigative reporters on the ground? Americans are sheep. Now, he's obviously read the counter comments that were appearing earlier in the week. And this was a counter comment to that last one. You're not a good liar, kid. No substance, nothing. So there is hope for the military-industrial complex that there might be enough assholes out there that will be behind engaging in a land war on European soil, where the other Nazis fought back in the 1940s. You want to go back there, dumb shits. Okay, let's see. Oh yes, this is an interesting one. Kiev, in the presence of Western countries, signed the Minsk agreements and did not fulfill a single point. That's yes, the Minsk Accords. Neither the U.S. nor Ukraine abided by it. Either one, any of them. The big deal with the U.S. is, and with many leaders in Europe, a dozen or so, is way back when the Soviet Union broke apart, it was Gorbachev was promised, and it was revived in negotiations with Putin, that NATO would not advance. In fact, James Baker, who was Reagan's Secretary of State, I believe, Secretary of State, said he assured Gorbachev that NATO would not advance one more inch. Well, they've advanced all the way to the continuous border with Russia. All the Eastern European countries that are in NATO now directly abut Russia. You could all you have to do is like spread your legs, and you could be on both borders. Lied, and then the Minsk Accords also had a number of provisos that not only Ukraine but the United States has utterly violated. But you have to read the Post and get this bullshit about how Putin is provoking all of this. Putin, and as my wife likes to point out, it's not Russia, it's Putin. Because when you have this, it's like the celebrity thing. It's like you use one individual's name, and that becomes your kind of symbol, your archetype for your enemy. It's much easier to rhetorically create an enemy if you can embody it in one person. Just a kind of well-known propaganda tactic. And of course, the response to that guy was, who started the Civil War? Well, buddy, the fucking U.S. started the fucking Civil War, because they launched a coup in 2014 from an elected government, Newland. I can't remember her first name offhand for some reason, who was the ambassador. She brags about it. And the irony of it is they were going to hold elections again in 3 months, and it was really likely that that the that the elected leader, I can't remember his name now, uh, at that time was going to be deposed. He was going to lose the election. Now, and the it would shift back to the relationship with Western Europe and the United States, and Ukraine would once again become more congenial. Whereas the guy in power at the time was leaning toward Russia. Now, because he was leaning toward Russia, is why the United States overthrew him. Now, if they had just waited 3 months, now the situation would have been taken care of. And what this idiot just said, first of all, there may not have been a civil war, and he's talking about the Donbass region, because there may not even have been a referendum on Crimea. But this is U.S. foreign policy. It's run by vicious idiots, homicidal maniacs who can't think their way out of a paper bag. So I'll do maybe one or two more of these.
The Foreign Policy Review. I'm Dustin Pickering, and this is Parrot TV you're watching. Subscribe to the YouTube channel while you're sitting here watching this program. Get on YouTube and click that subscribe button. We're discussing the Washington Post comments on the recent article from a couple of days back with Carlo Parcelli. So if you've got the comments you'd like to read available, feel free to go ahead and interject.
Well, I should stop here because we got more to cover. But one more. This guy goes, no American military involvement in regional Russian-Ukrainian conflict. This is too stupid for us to even contemplate. Yeah, I agree with that. Why don't we try to secure our southern border in order to stem the flow of drugs and COVID-19? So he's not even this guy is not even the standard liberal. He's obviously he's maybe a Trumper who wants to go back to the border wall, and he's got a gripe against immigrants. And this is the response from some people. False dichotomy. Look it up. Well, it's not a false dichotomy. He's talking about borders. What I just talked about. I mean, the United States is thousands and thousands of miles from the Ukraine-Russian border. But I should leave it at that because I want to go on. I want to go on to what they're saying about China and the Uyghurs. Well, the warmongering really never stops at the Washington Post. They're just they're evil people. So they have this opinion piece, and now it is opinion, and it's by the editorial board of the Washington Post. The opinion is, who ordered the Uyghur genocide? Well, first of all, there has been no Uyghur genocide. There was no Uyghur genocide. Look no further than China's leader. So it's bullshit from the jump. Once again, and let me just read a little bit here. Once again, they're leaning on this born again evangelical Christian, Adrian Zenz. They're just taking his pseudo research, which is not research at all, really. It's mostly made up out of whole cloth. China's top. Yeah. Well, okay. Let me say something here. My understanding is that if you defect from North Korea now, you will be paid $182,000. But the deal is you have to sign a document saying you will read verbatim propaganda handed to you by U.S. intelligence. It's documented. Look it up. I mean, it sounds unbelievable. I don't know what you would do for $182,000, but a lot of times in my life where I might have been tempted. 182,000, great, that's a lot of money. So I just thought I'd throw that out because it just occurred to me. Okay, this article, this warmongering article begins. China's top leadership gave the orders according to a new analysis, which is just simply an old analysis that he did in 2019 that he's repeating. I went and I tried to look for new material in it, and all I could see was material that I saw in the old analysis. And then I went, you look at the dates of the new analysis, and there's no updating from 2019. So actually, there's no violence in Uyghur in the Uyghur province, dominated province of China right now. So anyway, let me go on with this. China's top leadership gave the orders according to a new analysis from Adrian Zenz. You're born again evangelical moron and liar. And also, let me point out at this point, he's getting a lot of money from USAID and NED, and which are the overt State Department arms of the Central Intelligence Agency. It's been openly admitted. Okay, so he's getting money from the CIA to say this shit. Senior fellow in China studies at the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation, which I also looked up, which is also an arm of the U.S. government, which is also funded by the Central Intelligence Agency, the NED, and the USAID. So this is all government-funded propaganda that the Washington Post editorial board is repeating uncritically. He points to comments and actions of China's leader Xi Jinping, and secondly, his hand-picked Xinjiang regional boss Chen Guangguo. In 2014, when the measures were first contemplated, Mr. Xi declared those who should be seized, and those who should be sentenced. Now, what Xi is referring to is the fact that at that time, there had been hundreds of terrorist attacks by the Uyghurs in the province itself and all over China. I believe the figure of number of people who were killed in these attacks at one point was 146 killed and thousands injured. Knife attacks, bombs. The Uyghurs were out of control. And who was financing this out of control? The Central Intelligence Agency. It's a textbook example of the same thing they did with the Tibetans back in the 50s. They brought a bunch of these motherfuckers from Tibet to a clandestine base in Colorado, trained them in how to fuck people up like they do. Well, he'll get him, and sent them back into Tibet to murder and bomb and just cause mayhem and to destabilize China, Mao's China at the time. So it's nothing new. It's an old strategy. So this new deal, you train these guys at Fort Benning, Georgia. They've changed the name to something of Western Hemisphere, whatever. But I liked the original title of the base, where they train all these torturers and all these people, all these terrorists to plant bombs. I mean, it's a legend the number of people that they've sent back to Latin America and Central America to just murder tens of thousands of people. It's just Fort Benning, Georgia is just a place where you create killers. So the Contras are one example, or the death squads in El Salvador are another example, or the death squads in Guatemala are another example. But let's not get too far afield. So we got this stupid article here. Let's see, which actually is only a rehash, and not even that, because it's only a 1 page long, of this bullshit from this one guy, Adrian Zenz, this born again. I hate born agains. I hate evangelicals. I wish they'd mind their own business. They fucked up Uganda so badly and much of Africa. Somebody should go and pull them all out and strip them all down naked and make them fuck camels. I don't know what to do with these people. They are just perverse. Let's see. Oh, yes. And then there's Sir Geoffrey Nice. He's a member. He's a Tory member of the English Parliament. He will deliver the Uyghur Tribunal's judgment of what Xi has done to the Uyghurs on the 9th of December. Why, that's today. Well, what's the Uyghur Tribunal? The Uyghur Tribunal is another government, U.S. government agency organization, bought and paid for. Now, they have no power. It says right here they have no power. And for some reason, the Uyghur Tribunal was launched on the 3rd of September 2020 with assistance from non-governmental organizations, the Coalition for Genocide Response, which is, again, another arm of the USAID NED. That's who's funding these people. It's the Central Intelligence Agency. If the Uyghur Tribunal, which has no powers of sanction or enforcement, will confine itself to reviewing evidence in order to reach an impartial and considered judgment. Now, let me say at this point, what happens on the comment section in the Post and other newspapers and anywhere that where I linger, that's in the mainstream media, in the comment section, there's something that happens. If you don't know anything, you tend to take the content, and this is human nature to a certain degree, you tend to take the content of the article at face value. And the reason you don't know anything is because you do that over and over again. But if you're like me, and you go, well, who are these motherfuckers? Who said that? Who is it that said, who is this Adrian Zenz? And then you go and you listen to Ben Norton at the Gray Zone Project go on about Adrian Zenz and his Christian organizations and their relationship to U.S. intelligence, then you begin to learn a little bit. This is why this makes sense. That's why this suddenly makes sense. Otherwise, you're stuck in these matters where none of it makes any sense. Now, I had some commentary on some comments that I printed out on this article because they were enlightening. Let's see if this is it. Maybe this is it. Nope. It's hard to keep track of all this information.
On the tray?
Oh. No. But give me a moment, because this is interesting. This one exchange. Yeah, here we go. Let's just begin this exchange. No names. Looks like the Blame America Firsters are back, fresh with new messaging guidance from St. Petersburg. Now, this is on the Chinese. No. Oh, I must have gotten. No, this goes back to the Putin information. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's do that. These are some comments that were on the Washington Post comments page about the notion of Russia attacking Ukraine and the warmongering that went on in that article. And here it goes. Well, looks like the Blame America Firsters are back, fresh with new messaging guidance from St. Petersburg. Now, you get that a lot. If you have anything factual to say, you're a buddy of Putin's, because the facts are not leading toward the Post's conclusions. So you're called a Putin puppet and all of that. and nothing of substance. And then you got this thing that you got. How come Putin didn't do this when he had his puppet Trump in office? His puppet Trump. Oh, for Christ's sake, we've already been through the Pompeo Bolton thing. How stupid can you be? Look at the fucking sanctions that are now on Russia that were tightened during the Trump administration. Use your fucking head. Could it be that the Post was lying about? And then somebody comes up with something that makes a little sense. Could it be that the Post was lying to us about Putin controlling Trump? Well, yeah. Russiagate was a bunch of horse shit. And the Post went along with it for a long time until it became untenable. I mean, they're not as bad as CNN or CNBC. They won't let go of it because it's like a dog with a new chew toy, or now an old chew toy. But anyway, he said maybe the Post was lying. A little skepticism here, a little insight. Then here's the answers. Would they do that? Quote, watch the Helsinki tape again, pal. Trump walked in looking like a beaten dog, which he was. Putin had a smile on his face, an actual smile. Well, an actual smile. Well, there's facts for you. Putin looked down, and Trump looked down, and Putin had a smile. That's foreign policy 101. Go with the smile, you dumbasses. Talk about, and then you got this. Do your homework. You're delusional. China crushed Hong Kong and stuffed hundreds of thousands of Uyghurs in re-education camps during the Trump years. Here we have the lie about the Uyghurs. They didn't stuff hundreds of thousands into re-education camps. That just didn't happen. They have attempted to employ people to keep their minds off of the fact that the Central Intelligence Agency is flooding the Uyghur regions with Muslim fanatics, ideologues, that they embrace these groups that organize here in the United States and then send fodder over to China to cause mayhem. It's an effort to destabilize. It's like Hong Kong. If it was occurring here in Chicago or New York, there'd be a huge furor about it. Oh God, we've got another bomb in the subway. This is the third stabbing we've had this week. We got to deal with these Muslims. Oh man, can you imagine the fucking that Marjorie asshole Taylor or whatever Green or whatever her fucking name is, how just upset she would be, or Louis Gohmert, how much his forehead would glow, or Jim Imhoff, or any of these fucking right wing, Gantz or whatever his fucking name is. If Muslims were killing Americans at the rate they were killing Chinese, give me a fucking break. Let's go to the last section, if I can find the material now. And to me, this is one of the most interesting, because this deals with the comment section, not of Americans, but it deals with the comments of Africans. Let's see if we can find this article quickly. Actually, I don't think I have an article up, and I've got such a mess of papers here, but I'm going to wing it. What I wanted to talk about, and you've heard a lot about it, Chinese encroachment into Africa. Well, what does that encroachment entail? Well, mostly it entails China building infrastructure. So the producer of this show, Mutiu Olawuyi, who was of African descent or origins from Nigeria, sent this very interesting article along to me by the BBC Africa about people commenting on the difference between the Chinese presence and the American presence. And it's like it's vanished. So,
well, we have about 9 minutes or so left. So maybe we could read Mutiu's own comment that was given concerning media and invasion from Western powers versus Russia and China. As we mentioned, we were going to discuss that at one point later in the program. So I think we can probably fit that in at the end here.
Well, let me just give a summation
okay.
of what it said, what it occurred. The comments section. There were 1,250 comments to this BBC report. There were, of course, there were people there who said Africans should take care of Africa. They felt confident in their own ability to do what they're doing. They didn't need American and they didn't need Chinese help necessarily. But there was also actually a majority of people who said that they welcomed Chinese help. They welcomed the Chinese help. And because it involved infrastructure. Now, those 1,250 articles, I probably read 300 or 400 of them, maybe two or 300. There was not one article that supported the U.S. role in Africa. Excuse me, not one comment that supported the U.S. role in Africa. Not one. They all pointed to AFRICOM. They all pointed to the U.S. was just there to destabilize and exploit the resources. Same with Western Europe. And they were just there to arm different people to keep everyone off balance and struggling against each other, and just introducing arms and more arms, and so it was enormously on the side of the Chinese, or on the side of self-development, of self-expression. So I just wanted to say that. I wish I could have. Maybe I can get the materials and do them in another week. And yeah, let's do Mutiu's quote, because it's complicated.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to hear your opinion about it, Dustin.
Mm-hmm.
He says, Russia and China have no history of colonialist nor imperialist adventurism in invading and plundering African countries, nor providing safe sanctuaries to Africans who loot their own countries, but the typical African views the East less favorably, while they literally worship the West. Now, my experience with that one article is it's really not true. Not when it comes to practical matters like infrastructure. And East favorably, while they literally worship the West, who have done and committed almost all known human and economic atrocities against the African continent. You know why this is so? The typical African's worldview is framed by Western media coverage of the world. The global level of the media is domiciled in and controlled by the West. They determine who is the hero and the villain. And if they want to take out anyone, the media becomes prosecutor, jury, and judge on the person. There is no country invaded in the last 50 years by the West without the media first doing the mind job. Well, we've just demonstrated that in the last 50 minutes. What do you have? How do you anything to say?
Obviously, we know of the whole statement of manufacturing consent, as Chomsky has framed it. And he's obviously very much in. I've seen videos of his massive amounts of media that he consumes. That he's studied the problem extensively, and I think it's true that we have to have in a ostensibly democratic country consent from the governed to do these things, because what are they? If you have the domestic uprisal, then it's not going to work. And if you have that in Africa, if you sell people an idea through the media, and they and you constantly harp at the same fact, we'll just assume we call it a fact. It's like not really a fact. It's just some propaganda. If you just keep reiterating the same thing over and over and over, eventually people believe it. It kind of invades their space, and it gets in the. And I feel like when I consume what little media I do consume, I kind of feel like personally, like my mind space has been infringed. I feel like I'm inhaling methane or something. Like. I mean, because I just don't feel like, number one, I don't ever come out feeling more informed on the issue. I always feel like, I'm being told something that is partial truth, so whatever bias that the media, whether it's Fox or Washington Post or whatever other outlet there is, I feel like, they're not telling me what needs to be said. They're telling me what they want me to know. And you look at different, outlets, and there, you obviously have the right and the left. And a lot of times you find that, especially with these domestic issues, I mean, you have, for instance, like gun control, you have one side saying AR-15, 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 the other side saying gun rights, NRA, NRA. It's just hard for me to really feel like I am actually learning anything of value, reading newspapers. I mean, even Jefferson, stated that, anybody that thinks that they're informed reading the newspaper is full of shit, basically. I mean, I just feel like, reading a lot of these things, I never come out understanding the world better. I never understand. I cannot grasp what's being done and said in the world through the Washington Post or through, Fox News or whatever else. I mean, all I feel like is they're going to give me an image of something they want me to know, and then they're going to frame it in a certain way. And whatever viewpoint they want me to adapt, they want me to take that viewpoint, they frame it in that light. And so it's very tricky to try to, watch this and say, okay, I feel like I've actually understood this issue and there seems to be a convergence sometimes on these views. And I think Mutiu is definitely onto something when he says the mind job, because the mind job, they have to, convince people that they're going to do something good, or they're going to do something of value for that country, or for that, in the case of Africa, the continent. And obviously they're just telling people the same thing, the same lies until they believe it. And so that makes them in essence, consent to the presence of American powers or Western powers in their region, more so than, it's like it breaks people down. I guess it's the heart of what I'm saying is, if you keep repeating the same crap, it breaks people down. And it's like, in 1984 in the book, and George Orwell at the end, where he says, I love Big Brother, you have no choice at the end, you fight, and then eventually you just break down and give in, I mean, there's just no way to, and you're surrounded by your fellows that believe the same, they've heard the same crap and they still believe it. And you've broken away from the mold and you said, this just isn't the case. This is what I'm not seeing this way. This is not what's going on. And people will tell you, well, this is what the CNN says, or this is what Washington Post says, or Fox News has told me this. And, you hear all this, and it's like, it's really hard to kind of, maintain an independent stance. I don't know. I'm sure you've experienced a lot of this when you comment on Breitbart. When you used to tell us on the program that you comment on Breitbart and they jump on you, and then they banned you from Washington Post from commenting in their comment section. And it's like and you're providing them with the alternate take, and you're giving them actual evidence of what's being done that counters the wheel. And they're just saying, well, we don't want to hear it. That's exactly, they're willfully ignorant. They want to believe the bullshit,
Manufacturing consent, that would be the main book I would stress. So what we're saying here, though, is that Western media really has a monopoly on information.
Yes.
And say, for example, China and Africa is like what U.S. policymakers called Cuba a threat of a good example, or what they now call Nicaragua a threat of a good example. And that's Chomsky's phrase from Manufacturing Consent, is that these people are presenting a non-capitalist or altered forms of making the use of capital to advance infrastructure projects, huge infrastructure projects in China, in a way that doesn't, like the IMF or the World Bank, bankrupt those countries and force them to introduce austerity programs that cripple the people and starve the people. And that is a difference between what the Chinese, we're running out of time.
Correct.
But there was an article I had somewhere around here that very eloquently addresses that, and with the numbers. So
definitely,
that's very
I think
good.
one thing that we can gather from this program, as we've watched, as our viewers have watched, and if you're watching, subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, Parrot TV. This is the Foreign Policy Review, and we've takeaway here is that don't trust what you're being told blindly. Get some other information. Look into books. Look for some books on the subjects. Do some background research on the people that you're reading from, the articles, the authors of the articles. Get an idea of who you're reading, and definitely media literacy is very important. So this is the Foreign Policy Review. We're in conclusion of this program, and again, subscribe to the channel. And just keep a lookout in the future for this program on Thursday, 11 a.m. Central Standard Time, and noon at Eastern Standard Time. And I hope you guys out there promote the anthology. Keep it going. Our anthology series 2 of the Literary Parrot. Just keep telling people about it, and keep us in mind when you're on Amazon and you're looking for Christmas gifts for your fellow poet friends and family. We definitely need some sales on this thing. Let's get it up to number 1. Just keep it going up, and up in the ranks of Amazon bestsellers and poetry anthologies. So please buy a copy, buy 2 copies, buy 5. Hey, we need the sales. Thanks so much for you guys and your support, and have an excellent afternoon. Keep it coming. And Carlo, anything else you'd like to add at the end here?
No, I think you summed it up quite well.
Excellent. So we have Carlo's going to be in the book too. Carlo's going to be in the anthology. So, if you want to read his poetry, he'll be in the anthology. Carlo Parcelli. So, his work will be in the book at the in there. And as I've said, it's in alphabetical order, so it shouldn't be too hard to find his name if you're interested in him outside of this program, as his literary efforts as well. So buy a copy of the book just to check out the work. And I have an excellent political satire at the very beginning, which will be a wonderful addition to your humor for the holidays. So Carlo, tell us a little bit about in the conclusion of the program here, tell us a little bit about your poem that's in the anthology that we included.
I was afraid you were going to ask me about that. It's called The Love Song of J. Vivian Chambers, a.k.a. Whitaker Chambers. And if our readers are looking for something really raunchy and to the point at the same time, it'll give them a boost. It's basically a comment on the McCarthy era and the hypocrisy that went on then, and the hypocrisy that goes on now. And it's one of my shorter works. It's only about 80 lines or so, but that's what it deals with. And it's called The Love Song of J. Vivian Chambers.
Excellent. Thank you so much,
enjoy.
Carl. I hope you guys love that anthology when you buy it. If you buy it, give us an Amazon review. And in conclusion to today's program, the Foreign Policy Review, again, subscribe to the channel. Subscribe. We're looking for 1 million subscribers to this channel, and keep promoting our anthology with us. You're part of this community as well if you're watching this program, and we love you very much. We respect you, and we hope you enjoyed today's discussion. So keep a lookout for more on the future, and Thursday morning, actually, not afternoon, sorry, 11 or noon Eastern Standard Time. And have an excellent day. Just get out there, start discussing foreign policy, tell everyone what you've learned today. Have a wonderful day.
humanity. Keep watching The Politics every Friday, 12 p.m. Eastern